Hey y'all, we're back for another season of content as we get ready for a rebuild. This episode of FRC Round Up will discuss a new predictive market app for first events, how we can help prepare software students as they enter a job market dominated by the world of AI, and some interesting event shakeups that took place in Minnesota involving teams being moved without notice. All this and more coming up on this episode of FRC Round Up.
This video on fun is brought to you by viewers like you and also in partnership with the following.
Discover why so many FIRST teams utilize SolidWorks. From CAD to competition to certifications that prove your skills, SolidWorks prepares you for today's game and tomorrow's engineering career. Free for all FIRST teams. Go to solidworks.com/first to learn more and download. Founded by FIRST alumni, FRC Tees understands what teams need. High-quality apparel fast. From t-shirts to jackets and more, with a free 14-day turnaround and faster options available, you can join 200-plus teams who are already saving. Get a free quote by scanning the QR code or going to FRCtees.com.
Welcome to the show. If you've not caught our show previously, FRC Roundup is where we discuss and break down important topics impacting those in FRC. If you, the fun community, think there's a topic that we should discuss on FRC Roundup, please feel free to ping me on the fun Discord. I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. If you're not familiar with me, my name is Nick Mathis, and I am currently in the 1st and Michigan region.
And I am Connor McBride, an MC and game announcer in the New England district. Our guest tonight is Ryan Swanson. Ryan is a mentor on 6045 Sabre Robotics. You may also have seen him as the host on FRC Top 25, Funanalysis, and as a guest here in previous seasons. Ryan, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. Thanks for the invite, and definitely a few interesting topics to go through today. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, hey, we're going to go right into our first topic. So very interesting thread that got popped up by, I believe it's an alum or mentor from 971, talking about a program that they created originally called FRC.bet, now swapped over to prediction market app. So essentially what this is that it's a polymarket style bet. So you can bet on alliances from different events, on there's stats, and you can wager money. I believe it's not real money. I hope it's not real money. And that has definitely stirred up the community a little bit because a little bit further down into the thread, one of my good friends, Justin Turvey, mentioned, hey, there's definitely a reason why this has been brought up in mentor discussions and never actually done. And I agree. I don't like this personally.
Nah, come on.
No. Okay. I understand if this wasn't a high school competition, I'd be okay with it. However, like it 39 states plus Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico have legalized sports betting. This is technically sports betting. Now, out of all of those states, all of them have banned betting on high school sports and curriculars. So if there was actual money in this, that would technically be illegal. It doesn't look like there's real money. I don't see a way to go and actually add money into this. So that's good. I'm glad. I hope that this gets sorted out and that maybe people will accept it. Maybe it's a good thing. I understand the reasoning as to why it came in. You know, it's a good way to promote, the scouts on teams to get a lot more interested in scouting and really pay attention more to the event. I think what they were trying to do, it was, they weren't looking at it for any bad intentions on here. But I think you look a little bit deeper, and I think, at least for me, I'm not a big fan. Nick, we'll go to you first, and just let us know what your thoughts are on this.
Okay, so let me preface. I'll start with this. I am not a degenerate gambler. I'll start with that. The second thing is, in general, I agree with you in terms of the real money thing. If it was for real money on high school sports, that can be kind of shady. If it's just for fun, like, how is it different than playing Monopoly? Like, it's literally not, in my opinion. You're dealing with fake money. You're dealing with enjoyment. In my mind, it could be very similar to like how we do the prop bets sometimes on like TBA game day, where you can like bet. We could bet fun bucks at one point. during the streams. I don't know if that's still a thing, but like I don't see the harm in this. It's a fun, camaraderie thing with, your local peers and whatnot. I do think, and I wonder if like the communities, obviously like with the MLB, there's like Emmanuel Classe and a bunch of other, a couple other athletes that are, actively being litigated against for basically swinging the sports bet market. I'd be curious to see like if that didn't happen, what would the community's aspect be on this? Because I think that definitely has influenced it, at least in like the recent term. But I think it's fun. It's a enjoyable thing to mess with your team and be like, hey, I bet on this people and you didn't, and or like when we very similarly, like when we do forecast and there's like a dark horse, right? They could be like plus 800 to make the finals or something. We throw 100 robo dollars on it or whatever you want to call it, and then it could be like a fun thing amongst your friends. I think people are taking it a bit too serious. Now, on the flip side, if you look at it from a perspective of, well, you're just, getting students introduced to gambling earlier, and that could cause, issues with gambling addiction. Well, that's fine, but, not fine. I mean,
No,
that's not fine.
No, it's not.
But I don't think it's getting to that point. In my mind, like you gamble Monopoly too. So you buy property, you probably shouldn't in Monopoly too. So I don't know. Ryan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm really torn on this topic. Speaking as a degenerate gambler myself,
Yeah.
I have the sleeper app and I put parlays together, and I really enjoy doing that. And, I don't go through a ton of money, but it's still a part of my life. And, I think the good part is the sports connection. I love FRC in part because it's, a sport, right? It's sport of the mind. And I really vibe with the competitive nature, and I think this is a way to feed into that. Now, I was also going to comment to the professional, both in the NBA and MLB, people throwing matches to win money. I think it'd be really easy for a group of kids or a team or something to take this fake money and put real money behind it, to use this app and to do side bets on a match. It gives them that tool, which I think could be potentially harmful. But on the other hand, I've got kids on my team who are huge into sports and they're not huge into scouting. And this is a tool that I could use as a coach to push them in that direction. So I like the tool. I think the tool needs to be managed at a coach, a team, a mentor level for the kids and if mentors are using it, I don't care, right? But if kids are using it, then I'd like to see a mentor involvement and oversight with that. But like I said, I'm torn. There are pros and cons to it, and I think it's okay that it exists. But I definitely think mentor guardrails are appropriate.
Yeah, for sure. And I know another thing that came up that was done previously was like the 11-14 Simbucks method that I believe Karthik goes into in one of his scouting strategy streams. But
yep,
basically, that's another thing that's, not forcing people to scout, but it's a good incentive. And in my mind, I think that might be a bit different than this, because I still think incentivizing people to scout to get reliable data isn't inherently a bad thing.
I don't think this is all that different. I think it's just a more modern approach to what Karthik and 11-14 did back in the day. It just obviously with the poly market spin, but I think it's just a modern approach to that. Nobody really had an issue with that fundamentally. It's just how this was put together, and I think how betting and gambling is prevalent in a negative way in society right now, that it's coming to light in that thread the way it did.
Yeah, and that's why I brought up like the notion of, like Emmanuel Classe, Chauncey Billups, those high-level figures that have been around sports for ages. And, like obviously Chauncey Billups hits a bit close to home, playing on the Pistons. But it was a bit crazy to see those come out, because you always like inherently think like, well, somebody could just, have somebody put 20 grand on a game and throw a pitch and have it hit the dirt before it gets to the catcher.
Just
right?
One pitch and you can make 12 grand. On the other hand, for the students who are watching this, I'd like to point out that player was in line to make $38.1 million in their career. They threw it away for 12 grand. So do the math there. Gambling doesn't pay.
Right. All right. Before we go ahead and jump into our next topic of prepping software students for careers in the age of AI, let's bring on our producer Tyler to talk more about FRCTs.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nick. Hey, something that we love to do on Fun, by the way, is supporting other entrepreneurs, especially ones that are alumni of the program. And one that we've really got to tell you about that started up last year by a couple of first alumni from Brad at 5940 is FRCTs, and we're proud to partner with them here on Fun as well. You can go to FRCTs.com, but here's the gist. FRCTs delivers custom team apparel at wholesale prices with a free 14-day turnaround. And it's been trusted by over now 200 competitive robotics teams for their apparel needs, and they're looking for teams to offer a few more sponsorships to as well. Sponsorships are open through this Saturday, November 15th, if you're watching this live, and you can apply for a sponsorship and get more information, get a quote as well. And even if it's past November 15th, you can find out how awesome their wholesale pricing is as well too, and see how they can best fit your needs. They have capabilities from screen printing, embroidery, DTF, and other options available. So you can check them out at frcts.com to save your team some time and money.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. And thanks again from our friends at FRCTs. All right. Actually, a topic that Tyler had brought up that I think is actually a really good segue, into one of the things that is kind of taking the engineering or STEM part of the world by storm right now, and really the world as a whole, because NVIDIA basically runs the economy right now. But it is, obviously AI has been a big development, specifically probably over the past 5 or so years. It's been around and used in certain scenarios, but I think it's really become prevalent recently. And trying to understand how, obviously with the nature of how AI is and, how it's being used really in the STEM field is mainly, from my at least experiences, through software, right? It's being used a lot of the times to do data mining or various aspects of, essentially writing code in a lot of scenarios for some things. So one of the things that was brought up was essentially, obviously a big aspect of robotics is software. And I think we can all agree that FRC in recent years has pretty much turned into a software competition that has hardware with it. And how are we, as a organization or as a competition rather, preparing students to be able to be ready for when they get through college to the age of AI as it is now? One of the things that I thought was interesting, I did some research and was looking at a pretty extensive study done by ARPRM, and about a quarter of the way down, there's a graph that basically highlights, does your school provide AI training opportunities? And it goes into various aspects of breaking down by society and showing how, in certain scenarios, it's total urban, suburban, rural, low poverty, high poverty. It's a little bit down on that page, Tyler, if you want to scroll a little bit more. But it basically showcases how, there is still a good amount of schools that are not providing AI training opportunities. Specifically, the one that Tyler's got on screen right now is showing the discrepancy between AI users and non-AI users and how many still don't have a good amount of understanding about it. I think outside of the STEM field, there's still a good amount of people who don't really know what AI is, don't know how to use it. And for example, from my perspective, one of the big things that is struggling is there's still a lot of curriculum that is either against it or is not teaching and providing the training tools to use it. I don't know about you guys, but at least in industry right now, I have a few friends of mine, as well as even at my own work, that are basically being trained from software engineers to turn into prompt engineers. And they're basically being trained how to properly prompt the AI system to do the heavy lifting for you. And essentially, you would model the framework, create the high-level requirements, tweak it here and there based off some feedback, and then it basically does literally all of the work for you. And I think that the term prompt engineer is kind of interesting because you're using your critical thinking to understand what path the AI could go down. And yeah, that shows the graph that I was looking at, but still a good amount that, either don't have any training. I know this might be a bit dated, but don't have the training, not yet, but plan to. And there's a very little amount of yes. So I think it's important. I know the original topic was how do we prep students. I want to provide some background info on kind of where we wanted to go with this. But, I think from my perspective, we really need to start understanding what the landscape is going to be for our students moving forward and making sure that they're trained to be able to differentiate themselves from candidate to candidate, at least in the job market, in a realm of AI. Obviously, that becomes a bit more difficult because your skills in certain things might be used in different ways. But yeah, that's just, my general opinion. I think it's super important that we, first probably as a whole should probably start to look into how do we want to steer the overall resource and group as a whole into doing something to transition to this, but also providing maybe some scenarios in which they could encourage teams to start to use AI in various aspects, whether it's robot design or software. So, Ryan, I know you do a lot with education. I'd be curious to hear what your opinion is on this and what we do moving forward.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm an avid AI user myself. I have like 3 to 5 jobs depending on the time of year, and so for me to be productive enough to deliver on all those, I use AI in my day to day, and it is highly effective for me. So I'm a huge proponent of it, but I do think that education is very far behind when it comes to adapting and using this new tool. Both in the classroom and empowering kids to use the tool out of the classroom as well. But one thing I'd like to speak to, and I am not a software developer, so I enlisted the help of my student's favorite mentor, Aaron. I told him I would say that if he gave me all this good insight. So Aaron is a software. He actually owns a software company. And he manages I think it's 8 people who do software as a service effectively. And he's got a ton of insight into this, and they're converting their company into but they're leaning heavily into AI, put it that way. And so the way that Aaron described it to me is that in a professional setting, currently you're spending maybe 80% of your time doing code. Well, now the code is going to be automated. You're going to have Claude code. You're going to have other LLM type tools to actually do the code development. And your job will be to oversee the development of that code and to prompt it, like you mentioned, prompt engineering, to prompt it with the correct information that your AI agent will create the right code to solve the right problem. So in a industry perspective for students who are graduating from our programs, junior level developer positions are getting replaced by AI. The new entry level will be for people who will manage AI, so that the skills are different. You need to be able to critically think. You need to understand the problem, and you're going to be spending your 80% of your time not looking at code, but critically thinking and overseeing a number of AI agents, if you will. So with our robotics teams, I would say it's still critical that students have a foundational level knowledge for code. If you're going to oversee something typing code, you need to know what code is good and what code is bad, especially if we're interfacing with hardware, right? There's safety concerns about prompting Claude to say, hey, make my elevator go up and down, and then just hitting enter and trying that on your robot. That'd be a very risky thing. So you need to develop the foundational level skills in order to be in software. That's pretty obvious, I think. We are actually going to be using Claude Code on 6045. We've been doing it with Aaron's guidance so far, and we've had a ton of really good luck with it. With our students who already have a great Java foundation, we're able to get prototypes spun up very quickly, and it frees them up to critically think and to develop those skills for that new entry level position that they'll be the software industry is kind of going towards. So it's a huge development, and teams, I think, should put thought into how they approach it. But at a fundamental level, we're still trying to teach kids how to code. That's still the starting point.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I'm glad to hear that you guys are starting to make the investment using Claude Code. I think that's super interesting, and
$20 a month, it's worth it for our team.
For sure. Yeah, Connor, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I think what's interesting about this though is that it doesn't necessarily AI like reflecting on just software. Like what I've also been seeing this, at least from my time on an FRC team, is that it can also be applied into like your marketing and your outreach aspects as well. So being able to set up a business and drive it for success and all of your social media stuff. I mean, we've seen plenty of times when people, my Instagram feed is just filled with people making videos on Sora, but that's a little bit different than what we're doing there. But just that dog walking up to the house and turning into a fire hydrant. That's
I will say some of the AI videos they have out there nowadays it's like crazy how real some of them look. Like, for example, and not necessarily a video, but back a couple weeks ago, my football team that I coach, we had beat our rival. So there's like this like brown jug that we play for, and we haven't won it in like 5 years. So there was we won it for the first time in 5 years, and there's a picture of our head coach and our AD at the end of the game that are like hugging each other as he like hands them the trophy. And there's like a bunch of background people that like aren't paying attention, like ruin the picture. And we're at, getting dinner after, and, opens up his phone, clicks AI, says, hey, I want to remove these two people. It removes it, and the picture looks exactly like it would have if they weren't there. Like, that's
nice.
Crazy. And you've always been able to, like, do editing from that aspect, but, like, previously, that's hours of editing. Lining up, like, grass clippings and make sure it looks, like, natural and stuff like that, and AI just does it like that now.
Connor, to that point, I have run into it where kids get lazy. They are sending emails to sponsors and they just dump it into ChatGPT and say, oh, write this email for me. One thing that I've been preaching that I need to do a better job of with the kids is human in the loop, term called human in the loop. You're using a tool. The tool does not replace you. The tool enhances what you can do yourself. And in my opinion, you should never email somebody or really produce any sort of AI content without reviewing it thoroughly and putting your human voice back into it.
Well, it's like I get messages from my doctors now where it's like, this was written by Henry Ford AI with approval from your NP. And it's like,
yeah.
Wow.
And you think less of them because of it. It's like, you got to keep the human in the loop. And especially when we're educating these kids, just letting them rely on ChatGPT is not good for development.
No, for sure. I mean, like I throw a lot of the emails that I send day to day at work, I'll throw that into a GPT mainly just to be like, does this make sense? Because it's like, while English is my first and only language, I read, speak, and write it like it's my seventh. So it's just like, I throw it in. I'm like, please tell me this makes sense. And GPT is like, you're good. And I'm like, cool, send. So it's super helpful for me. And I think one of the big things, at least for what we've started to see over the past couple of years in FRC for on a software side, is doing machine learning to be able to, track game pieces and for like game piece acquisition and continuing with scoring with Able Tag Vision and all that stuff. So there's a lot of really cool things, especially if you want to go into computer science, become a software engineer. I mean, there's plenty of spots like, startups going all around. There's plenty of work in the Department of Defense industry. If that's
Department of War.
Okay. Listen.
All right. Before we jump into our next topic of the night and our final one, let's bring back on our producer, Tyler, to talk more about SolidWorks.
Well, that's a great transition to go into that. Awesome. So, hey, everybody, big shout out to SolidWorks, who are helping prepare first students for real-world applications by offering SolidWorks for free for first teams when you go to solidworks.com/first. Design in 3D, build your robot, and gain the career-ready skills that 80% of employers look for when hiring engineers. Trusted by engineers everywhere, you can discover why SolidWorks is used by so many first teams. Plus, you get the skills for competition and skills for life. Your next design can be the start of your engineering future, including certifications that you can utilize now and in your career path. So go to solidworks.com/first to learn more and get that free download for your team as well. And Ryan, I think what you're referring to is kind of the Star Trek method, where it's like, hey, the computer's still there, but it's the enhancement of it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Tyler, and thanks again from our friends at SolidWorks. So, jumping to our final topic of the night, definitely some interesting note with Minnesota events that came up, over the past couple of weeks, and an approach that was taken to schedule teams into specific events. So, Ryan, I'll go ahead and throw it to you. We'll start with you, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to try to give the best context I can to what I understand happened, and then we can dive into opinions about it after the context. So for those who don't know, the Duluth regionals, Lake Superior and Northern Lights, occur at the same time, same place, same location, divided by glorious pipe and drape in our regional format in Minnesota. And teams sign up for, whichever event. There's often, not a lot of logic. They'll put one or the other. Some teams flip back and forth. Other teams put the same event every year for the last, 7-8 years. And I was talking to some teams about, early September, whenever round one was, and we find out, who gets into what round one regional. It was following that I started hearing from teams. They're like, hey, we got moved from an event and we're not sure why. We signed up for Northern Lights, and we've always attended Northern Lights, and Lake Superior wasn't even on our list. And somehow we got moved to Lake Superior. And I talked to two teams at the time who were like, hey, what's going on? They got an explanation that the regional director had moved them from one event to the other for the purpose of, and this is secondhand information, and I haven't actually posted this anywhere, but for the purpose of occupying the open slots so that in round two, there'd be less likelihood of slots filling up and local teams not being able to get a spot. And so last year in Minnesota, there were a ton of complaints, and me being chief among the complainers, about being able to access local events. And I think that, that part was a response to trying to get local teams, local events, which I completely agree with. And I think the approach there was great. Well, moving forward, more teams started getting shuffled around, and there were a lot of teams getting moved from Lake Superior, Northern Lights getting flip-flopped. And after kind of all the shuffling, it didn't take a lot of analysis to look at the team numbers and say, oh, wow, I recognize a lot of team numbers in Lake Superior, and to go over to the Blue Alliance page for Northern Lights and being like, I don't recognize that many team numbers here. Some people smarter, have more time than me, did the math, and they found that 31 out of the 32 teams at the time of my Chief Delphi post had not made the playoffs on the Northern Lights side of the field. And meanwhile, if you look at the Lake Superior side, it was like 83 or 87% of the teams had made the playoffs in 2025. So there was a lot of speculation kind of behind the scenes. And then I get a text from actually two different people who were at a roundtable, a Jumpstart Rochester roundtable, where our regional director, Nicole, had shared that she did, in fact, separate teams by their playoff record, or their whether they were in or not in playoffs in 2025, into Lake Superior and Northern Lights. So that's not up for dispute, and that was shared subsequently in a public communication from our regional director, that's what she did. And I would like to put out there that I think the idea of, giving middle of the road teams who maybe struggle to make the playoffs, maybe, don't have a real chance of going to the world championship, trying to elevate those teams is a fantastic thing. And I'd like to get your guys' feedback before I share my own about maybe the process that led to that.
So, okay, I will say from this perspective, my first answer is going to be, if that's your goal, go to damn districts. That's literally the purpose of the district model, is to give a ton of teams an opportunity to be able to qualify at larger events without having to win the event or win an impact or get a high level award. That is literally the purpose of the district system.
Let me push back really quick to say that Nicole has been an advocate for more and smaller events. and I want to give her credit where credit is due for that.
Sure.
She cut capped events at 48 this year for Minnesota. Note that historically we've been around 60 team events with 8 matches, and people have complained about that, including
8
me.
matches.
Right. It was insane. It has been insane. But I want to give credit to Nicole where she is pushing in that direction, even if we're not all the way to districts yet.
Okay. So, that's fair. I'll give Nicole props for that. Listen, I know it's not an easy thing to do, but I wanted to put that out there. The second thing is that's not how the system works. It has been instructed and explained multiple times on how event preferencing works. From first on down, you create a priority list. Depending on how it is, it's supposed to be a lottery. And for you to backhand, I guess, essentially manipulate the team list, for lack of a better term, and not provide the upfront transparency to the teams is ridiculous in my mind. And I know that. So first of all, I want to give Colin his flowers. They came out. It sounds like they majoritarily resolved the solution for my interpretation. But it should have never got to that point, because event preferencing is the one thing that truly can make or break team seasons, right? Like, it's no different than, like, for example, like I'm a football coach, and we get randomly selected into a playoff bracket based off of playoff points that we earn throughout the year. If we get a bad draw, like, we're screwed. We, like, for example, my team, my high school, we were 5th in the state in our division for playoff points, and we had team 2 and 3 in our district. So it was 2, 3, and 5 in our district, which means the round of 16, there's only going to be one of those top 5 teams left in the playoffs. So from my perspective, the lack of transparency that happened here was criminal in my mind, and I'm glad it was immediately addressed. And I think that I'll leave it there for now. But I'm disappointed, and I'm happy that it was rectified in the way that it was.
I have to agree with Nick on this. So there's New England has done something. I'm not going to say that it's similar. It maybe. So this is what New England is doing, and New England made it very clear in multiple town halls prior to the events even being published that in prior years, New England events, and some of them have suffered from poor attendance or number of teams at events, to the point where, for example, UVM, University of Vermont, last year, it was its first year in existence. And I think the only reason that event, the reason why it ran, is there was an incentive for teams to go there for their third event. And if they registered it for it as their third event, that extra $1,000 registration fee would be waived. And New England First did a really, really good job at making sure that teams could get group rates at hotels in the area, to the point I think we were only paying maybe like $80 to $100 per hotel room a night. Mm-hmm. And when you have multiple kids in one room, that the price goes way down. So it made it very well for that. But we were told, I think even that year, that, hey, this isn't going to be a forever thing. This is a one-time thing, so we can get this event up and running so people can understand how good it is. But even then, there's still times where it's just like, can this event even run? So what was mentioned this past year, a few months ago, was events are being capped, I think, at 30, and they will not open up to its maximum capacity until there is at least 24 teams registered for each event. So essentially making sure that, hey, like, if you don't get into these events, you're probably going to have to go to one of these. Just letting you know. It's like, you might not win. You might win the lottery. Great. That's awesome. Congrats. You might not. That's fine. It's going to happen. So, and that has happened. I believe the cap just recently opened so that teams can start going in for like their third events. And if they held out long enough to wait for other teams to go in, I'm okay with that because it means that events were able to run and teams were like, okay, yeah, we'll go to that event, but teams weren't necessarily being forced into other events. So I think what's good for the situation in Minnesota is that both of the events are in the same venue. I know a lot of teams in New England, some of them have to travel quite a bit. And if they got thrown into an event that they had not preferenced at all, that was now, instead of 15-20 minutes down the road, is now 2.5 hours away, and now they have to pay for travel, all the housing, all that, redo all their logistics. That can really bite the team, especially if they're not one of those teams that can afford that. So fortunately everything got corrected, and that was the situation where it was two events in the same venue at the same time. But that definitely could have been a lot worse.
That kind of, I'm going to add a couple comments if we have time here. That kind of speaks to one of the thoughts I've had about this whole situation, and that is, what if no one said anything? What if we got to these events and we're just, playoff teams on one side and non-playoff teams on the other? I just can't imagine what's going through, what would have happened if it got to that point, right? Mm-hmm. We can cheer that it got corrected, but it only got corrected because it got called out. What would have happened if it didn't? And I think the thing I'm most disappointed about in this whole thing was the public reply from Nicole to teams, in which she made the comment, and I'll read it verbatim. Unfortunately, while the decision was rooted in positive intent, some online discussions misrepresented its purpose and spread misinformation.
That's
I
not
regret that the
misrepresented.
explanation shared at the Rochester Jumpstart event was lost in translation online. Now, I'm going to put context to this, that the people who shared information with me, one of them I've known for 15 years, the other I've known for 10 years. They separately contacted me saying, this is pretty crazy. And they shared the same story. And that story and my post, which is unquestionably the online discussions that misrepresented the situation, I'm called out basically by our regional director. My misinformation aligned perfectly with her public statement, all the way down to the reasoning that it was done, which was to support mid-level teams. So I would love to hear what the misrepresentation she felt was. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking forward to the public forum event that is being hosted on the 17th, where we'll be able to ask questions like that. So,
oh, good. Well, I'm at least glad they're at least providing you a forum that you can, why did this happen?
Pretty much, yeah. What led us here? I understand that there's there's a real issue. There are teams who are caught in the middle, who are left behind. There is an issue there. There is a solution for them that you mentioned, Nick. Mm-hmm. But yeah, why this solution, and why no transparency?
Yeah, and I know I sound like a beating a dead horse when I bring up districts. But is there really, from your guys' perspective, is there anything else that we could do to try and resolve the issue besides just going to districts? I don't know there is. I don't know that there is.
More and smaller events. It's giving teams the opportunity who, let's say you're the 30th best team in an event, right? Well, if you're the 30th best at a 50-team event and you go to a 40-team event, well, maybe then you're on the cusp of getting drafted, mm-hmm. right? It's more smaller events, and purely to Nicole's credit, she is pushing us in that direction. And I think the long-term implication will be Minnesota will be going to districts eventually. And the path there is more regionals, really the California model, more events, smaller events, and just, building that infrastructure to support doing that.
How many teams are in?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you're going to say, how many teams are in Minnesota right now?
185, give or take.
That is plenty to have a district.
Yeah, that's just a little bit less than New England by 10 or 15.
It's near the threshold where we almost need to have 3 events in 1 week. It is just below that threshold, but if we anticipate any growth, planning for 3 events in 1 week would be a step up in challenge relative to 2 events.
For sure.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, no, appreciate the discussion. I think it was definitely good, and I'd be curious to hear what comes out of your guys' public town hall that you have. But all right. Well, thanks again, Ryan, for coming on. On behalf of our producer, Tyler Olds, my co-host, Connor, on All Fun Correspondence, I'm Nick Jr., and thanks for watching tonight. We'll be back more frequently as we enter the rebuilt season here coming up. And don't forget that archives of this show can be found on our YouTube channel by searching Fun Robotics Network. See you next month as the rebuilt season continues to take shape on FRC Roundup. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to stay up to date on future fun videos. Founded by First alumni, FRC Tees understands what teams need. High-quality apparel fast. From t-shirts to jackets and more, with a free 14-day turnaround and faster options available, you can join 200-plus teams who are already saving. Get a free quote by scanning the QR code or going to FRCtees.com. Discover why so many first teams utilize SolidWorks. From CAD to competition to certifications that prove your skills, SolidWorks prepares you for today's game and tomorrow's engineering career. Free for all first teams. Go to solidworks.com/first to learn more and download.